Good morning, everybody. You tuned into Crack Course. It's sunny here, so sun's in my eyes. I'm not angry, I'm just like this because of the sun. So basically today we're going to be talking about, by the way, thank you for being here with me today. Today we're going to be talking about trauma, past trauma, and how holding on to that can potentially cause physical ailments and other such things. It's a very interesting subject because just lately I've been looking into the work of Dr. David R. Hawkins. He wrote a book called Power versus Force. I'm getting through it now at a rate of knots and it's fantastic, man. Also, my lady love has introduced me to a guy called Dr. Andreas Moritz. I believe he's a doctor. My apologies if I've accredited him with that title and he is not, but I'm sure he is. And basically, this guy talks about his own stuff, but it's exactly the same as Dr. Hawkins. Isn't it funny how certain people that break through, it's a bit like Ken Wilber with the the theory of everything and the integral theory. All of this stuff, it's the same, but it's just put across in different ways with different words through a different theory, and it's brilliant in my opinion because it starts to paint a picture. All of these people have had the exact same inspiration, but they've interpreted it in different ways, which basically it's a revelation, because what it does is it kind of backs up everything that these guys are saying. For instance, in the Power versus Force book, he says that every single truth is literally subjective to your own personal level of perception. So what's the truth for somebody may not be the truth for somebody else. Therefore, absolute truth is subjective. Because, there was at one point we all believed that the earth was flat. I mean, some people still do. And I mean, you know what? School's out, brother. I can't... I've not been up there to see. I don't know. But I suppose my perception of truth is what I've experienced myself. And perhaps those experiences have been through my perception. Who knows? But you see, this is the conundrum that we face. It's all perception. Our own truth is based on our perception and where we are on our evolutionary scale. Now, ultimately, some people believe absolutely that the world is flat. In fact, they did back in the day, and then they apparently proved that the world was a ball, a sphere. And that's what we've believed for however long. Now people are starting to go back to the flat earth theory, and people absolutely believe that. Well, you see, I personally think the correct perception to be viewing this at is one of neutrality, because unless you've physically seen it with your own eyes, unless you've had that first-hand experience of being able to witness yourself whether or not the earth is flat or whether it's a sphere, well then you cannot say absolutely one way or the other. So therefore you cannot say with 100% truth that it's one or the other, can you? I personally believe that that is the correct way to look at it. But anyway, so past traumas and stuff, you see, this is the thing. These guys, they're all bloody talking about the same stuff. And at least in the case of Dr. Hawkins and Andreas Moritz, they both say that the inability to let go of past traumas will manifest in your life in physical ways as well as other ways, but in physical ways, which is what we're saying here. Andreas Moritz, in the Cancer is Not a Disease book, basically says that cancer is a formation of cells that directly relate to a person's inability to live in harmony. So therefore, it's the body's warning sign, it's the body's way of saying there's a disharmony, and it's ultimately a healing mechanism based on the fact that we should be self-aware enough to understand that that's what it is, and there's healing that needs to be done, so that you can have a pinpoint area to look at with regards to your own personal, emotional and spiritual healing, which will then echo into the physical, and you know, tumors and stuff will then retreat into nothing. This is a very, very interesting aspect for me, very, very interesting subject, because like he says, millions of pounds have been pummeled into cancer research. All of the treatments that are available for people kill more people than what they heal. Now, I knew a guy once, I say knew past tense because I don't get to speak to him anymore, you know, he doesn't really contact me much anymore, but I knew a guy once that, and I apologise, that was a personal dig, I'm sorry. I suppose it hurts a little bit, you know, when people don't stay in contact. It's hard, but again, it's a perception thing. Anyway, nonetheless, I knew a guy, and he had cancer, and he went through the cancer treatments at the hospital, I believe. You know, he was at the hospital quite a lot, and he's still here today. He had prostate cancer. Now, he's still here today, fitter than ever, fighting fit. Now, this is the thing. People would say that he's a success story for the treatments, that it worked on him. But you see, I would say this. The difference between him and other people is his non-defeatist mentality. This guy has one of the strongest wills I've ever known. And I'll say that now, like, he has an indomitable will. He beat that thing with his mind. And maybe it was a combination of that and the physical treatments that he went through. Perhaps the physical treatments got rid of the physical manifestation of the, you know, the cancer itself, and his mind did the rest. Whereas a lot of these people that give in, have you noticed, they tend to be gone within weeks or months. See, this is the thing. People forget that the physical and the spiritual and the mental, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of the same structure, the same force. We're all mind, body, spirit complexes. So when we try and heal, that's where we need to start looking at all three. And you see, that's the forgotten side of all of this. So, if you're a person that holds a grudge, think about it. When you hold a grudge against someone, I mean, perhaps you think that that grudge is justified. And in some cases, it might well be. You know, you might feel as though you're well within your rights to hold on to negative feelings towards this person because they really hurt your feelings. But when it comes down to it, ask yourself, who is it really hurting? Who is it really hurting, man, you know? Think about that, because if you're holding a grudge, you might well be justified within that grudge in your mind. But when you think about the negative feelings and stuff that go, you know, that are attached, they hurt you physically. You have a a physical response to that trauma. So that's how we know that mental traumas, at least, have a physical manifestation. And if you're holding on to these things for long periods of time, you know, years, then wouldn't it stand to reason then that if you hold on to these physical manifestations, that they would manifest into something more severe? Because now it's gone away from just feeling a gut reaction to something. It's actually turned into something in the gut, an accumulation of whatever it is that you've been feeling. That, my friends, I think is where we need to start looking when it comes to a lot of these aspects in relation to what's been happening over the last few years, and here he goes again, and how the bigger picture is being played out here. Because if this is knowledge that is being tapped into by certain people, you know, certain pioneers of thought, people like David Hawkins, you know, people like Andreas, Moritz, people like Ken Wilber. If this knowledge is being tapped into and put out there on a level that we can gain access to it, then ultimately you could argue the point that perhaps folks in higher places that do the controlling of the planet have access to the information too, and quite possibly have had for lengthy periods of time, and choose to withhold it from society. And when you start looking at the bigger picture as to how the human race is being controlled and manipulated and held under a cosh of financial, medical, spiritual trauma and fear, well, then you then have to start thinking, well, if that's the case, how would they impose control on the masses through those tools, those weapons? I'd have to say weapons, because weapons destroy and tools create, don't they? So we are literally under siege, and we are having these weapons used against us, make no mistake. So I mean, all I can say is, in our history, these tactics have been used time and time and time again. I dare say 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10 of these crazy events that have happened, you know, these globally known about events, have been in some way manufactured. You know, to bring about these desired results. But what else can you do right now than basically pick at our most recent one? Because ultimately the most recent aspect of this was the shit that started in 2020, early 2020, late 2019, but early 2020. If you look at how the whole thing was played out, it was fear, it was separation and segregation. Everybody's now holding on to trauma. If you look around, okay, there is so much evidence to the contrary of what was told to us. And yet people still mask up, don't they? In hospitals, people are still saying it's mandatory to wear a face covering. Now, ultimately, there is mountains of evidence to say that these things are pointless, but yet people still reside in fear. You can be on your own in a waiting room, and somebody will say, can you put your mask on? Now, they're stood across the room from you, a greater distance of 2 meters, and they'll be telling you to put a mask on. Now, first and foremost, the mask's there to protect yourself, right? So if they're comfortable with that mask and its protective influence, well then why on earth would they be bothered about you wearing one? Secondly, the 2 meters, if they're stood more than 2 meters away from you, then well, maybe if they take that into account, well then if 2 meters is a safe distance, then surely that should be enough without wearing them. However, if you then say, well, you've got 2 of your anti-death measures on, the 2 meters distance and your little mask, well then surely that should be enough, right? Well, apparently not. Apparently not. And then when you look at how these things are rendered useless after a very short period of time outside of a sterile atmosphere, and these people have been wearing them all day, it's absolutely ridiculous. The only thing that backs up what they're saying is their own fear. To them. That's their perception. So, people are holding on to that trauma, which is stopping them getting out of the situation, and ultimately it manifests in such a way that causes separation, which is another level of trauma. Because now what's happening is you've got us and them, that mentality which was around, has been around for a very long time, but it's even more visible within society since the last 3 years have passed. The us and them mentality. That's a level of trauma that people will hold on to for a very long time. It gives people a reason to hate. And unfortunately, most people look for reasons to hate more than anything else. So they'll find it. Now, then you look at all of the government's measures to counteract that which was lied about, severity of, etc., in the last 3 years or so. You know, these things that you're supposed to have administered. I daren't say the words anymore. Talking about this subject is so bloody surreptitious these days. You've got to beat around the bush. But anyway, anybody who knows me and knows the shit that's been going on, Christ, if you haven't, you've been living under a rock. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. I'm alluding to it without saying it. So ultimately, these things that they want you to have administered that are apparently a healing actually turn out they aren't. What it's actually doing is it ruins your immune system. I won't go into the reasons why. Look it up for yourself, but it does. It absolutely obliterates your immune system. We've all got a natural born immune system, for crying out loud. What this thing does is it abuses it and it just annihilates it. So you got to look at it this way now, okay? Mind, body, spirit. They took your spirit away. All right? They dealt with your mind, with the fear, the separation tactics, you know, the levels of trauma that they forced people to live under. Taking away jobs, taking away your purpose. It's your mind. Your body, next. They got rid of the natural immunity. They had you administer these things through the process of fear into your body to obliterate your physical ability to heal itself, to protect itself. And if they didn't obliterate it, well, they certainly hindered it massively. And then your spirit. Well, you see, everybody's spirit is in the process of being diminished because you look at the world around you and things just seem to be getting worse. They don't seem to be getting better. Everything's a crisis these days. Nobody's got any money. You're forced to live in a system that requires you to be capitalist, and nobody's got any capital. You look around, you've got no friends anymore because they're all bloody separated. It all starts to ball into one big snowball. Your mind, body, and spirit is being attacked. And if your mind, body, and spirit is that which you need to maintain and have in harmony in order to live a long, fruitful, and healthy life, well, then it goes to fucking reason. It stands to reason that that is how these people would operate when it comes down to destroying who you are and what you are. It stands to reason. I dare say if you look at all these other things that have happened, they've all been, wars, look at these things, they all do the same thing. Mind, body, spirit. That's the way they want to try and attack you because they know that that's what us, the people, need to keep in harmony in order to live fruitful, healthy, and happy lives. Self-empowered lives. Lives of wisdom and knowledge where we're able to stand on our own 2 feet, support ourselves and each other. We don't need them. Now, why would they want to destroy everything that you are? Why would they want to destroy your mind, your body, and your spirit? Why? Well, that, my friends, is a question for another video. That's a question to be answered in another video, but we can allude at the end of this one to something of the name transhumanism, the next level of eugenics. Now, I'm going to leave it on that. I'm going to wish you all a very, very good day. Love and peace to all things everywhere. Truly, love and peace to all things everywhere. I wish you all a very, very good day. This is Crack Course signing off. Thank you for being here. Peace.